Welcome to Moments with Mary Ann. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very empowering show coming right up with special guest Lisa Winston, and she's here today to share with us her new book, Your Turning Point: How to Break Free from a Life of Limitation and Break Through to a Life of Miracles. Now, Lisa is one of my favorite people. She is a highly gifted vocalist, #1 international bestselling author, TV host, and inspirational speaker. A life of extreme challenges, including losing her home to a wildfire and having breast cancer, made Lisa hungry for a deeper connection to Source and determined to find her true calling. Today, she shares that message that life is always happening for you, and challenges are sent to refine, not define you. Lisa has produced many influential global summits and is featured on summits, national radio, podcasts, and cable TV shows. She currently hosts and produces the Mindset Reset TV show, which reaches millions worldwide. So let's welcome to the show, Lisa Winston.
Mary Ann, thank you for having me. I absolutely adore you, and I'm so excited that we get this time together.
I am so honored I get to spend this time with you. And of course, talking about your book. How exciting is that? I mean, as soon as I heard about this, I was like, wait a minute. How was I not the first person we did an interview with on this?
I don't know. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay, because, timing is everything. And what's so interesting? It's like a lot of people right now, I mean, we just finished the beginning of the year. People have been doing their resolutions. About this time, they're like, I'm kind of throwing those out the window. Nothing's really happening with those. And, I really feel like discouraged. Yeah. And, before I get too much into that, I really want to ask you, what was the inspiration behind writing this book?
Oh my God, I love that question. And it's, me, I have so many things I have yet to share with the world because I just had this jam-packed year last year, but it all really started, and it's in my book. I tell people just to get the book and read the story. But literally my business, I had been coaching for a couple of years and it just wasn't going anywhere because, I kept trying to make it happen and the universe kept telling me this is not the way to go. So, things finally, it was clear that I was supposed to shut down my business. So I did, but I also in the meantime got a hit to go be back with my mother, who was 87 at the time. And I'd just been with her. So I was like, well, I know she's old, but I don't, why am I supposed to go? So I literally started this process of all of 2017 or this is 2019. So I guess it's all of 2018. It started in 2017, but literally closing down my business, surrendering to the universe, not knowing where I was supposed to go, just taking one step at a time. And if I told you all the things that happened in that year, literally just stepping into things that didn't make sense, that weren't popular, whatever. So what happened was through a huge amount of synchronicities, Joe Vitale and I ended up having dinner together in San Antonio, the end of January of 2018. And we were like, why are we together? Like, why are we here? I don't know, So we started talking about books, and I had a vision. I had created a lot of books that burned up in the wildfire in 2007 in my home, and I just never really got around to finishing it. I just never felt it. And so he, called me out. He said, let's pick a title. Let's find out what it is you want to do. Tell me when you're going to have your first 3 chapters done. So I finally had a mentor, a coach, to really hold me accountable to that. So long story short, also went back, found out my mother was dying on the way back east to be with her, and took care of her till she died in May. And then I stayed there to close the estate. I wrote my entire book while my mother was dying, while I was taking care of her.
Wow.
So it's crazy.
Well, it's interesting when inspiration's flowing. It can be in different times in our lives. I mean, some people, some of their best work happens during major transitions and really difficult times,
Yes, it's so true. And that's what's so weird about it. I always used to tell people about back in 2007 when I lost my house to wildfire and then I was diagnosed with breast cancer 2 months later. I always liken it to it was one of the most challenging times of my life, but it was also one of the most enlightening, beautiful times of my life because I really had to stay in present moment every day. I didn't know what was going to happen next. I just kind of lived it, walked it. And so even though I had these bouts of difficult times, I was so elated a lot of times too. And that's exactly what happened. I was just talking to Joe the other day and I said, it's so weird, how I was taking care of my mother who was critically ill. and dealing with that and the emotions and the family, yet writing a book, going out, laying in the grass, I remember all these fond moments. And I was in this very miraculous space of things just falling in my lap. So I really was in this miracle space, yet I had all this stuff going on, which, I'm still trying to grasp it. None of it makes sense,
And I get that. I get that. But, what I really appreciate about you, I mean, you're such a beautiful soul. You have so much compassion, love, and intelligence. You bring so much wisdom to the discussion. You really are about being in the flow. And for a lot of people, that's really difficult.
It is difficult. I mean, trust me, I resisted a lot. Most of my life I spent in resistance. And even now, I mean, I do a lot of energy work and, work with healers and Reiki and stuff because I'm trying to remove that energetic, attachment to the past so that I can move forward and do, jump more into my life mission. But resistance is normal for everybody. But again, if you're burying your head in the sand and you're in denial, you're not taking responsibility for what it is you're creating, because that's a huge conversation. Lots of people just don't believe in taking responsibility. It's like, why did this happen to me? Why is fate being so mean to me? And I get that. I've lived that. But when you take responsibility and you start seeing the messages and you start trusting the universe, it's really about, I want to share this with your audience because one of the biggest changes for me was I just didn't know where to go anymore, right? I kept coming up against walls, hitting my head, and I'm like, what's happening to me? I've done everything you've told me, Spirit, right? Mm-hmm. So one day I just opened my arms to the side and I looked up in surrender and I said, okay, I give up. I don't know what to do. Tell me what to do. So it's been this incredible journey of surrender, extreme trust, because we all have trouble with trust and we all have trouble in letting go. We try to control everything. So that's what I want people to know. And that's a difficult journey too, but it's really amazing when you start to get into it. The universe conspires to bring your dreams true, really.
And you're definitely a person that lives that, and so in your book, you talk about how we attract what we believe. And a lot of times people have heard, well, we attract what we think about. But what we believe, they're like, that might be something that maybe it's been said before, but it just sounds a little new.
Yeah, I love that. And that's another one. Since Joe and I are so close and we talk about it all the time, and he's really helped to shift me into more of a miracle space and a space of gratitude, daily gratitude. It is about beliefs. You have to remember, I think I had a conversation with my daughter one time because we were talking about attracting things. And, she said, I don't believe you attract what, you believe, or I just think things happen. Like, I think I shared with you or in my book that I was gang raped back in college and some other things. I've had a lot of things happen to me. So most people would say, my God, you didn't attract that. And I'm like, well, I get that, right? I didn't consciously attract that, but we're running programs and beliefs in our hard drive, in our subconscious that we don't even know are there. And those are always prevalent, above anything that we're you try to say an affirmation, right, about money and you have scarcity issues and you say the affirmation and your mind says, oh yeah, right, you're broke, right? So that whatever is running in your subconscious is creating your reality. And then there's another layer to that, which I learned from Joe too. It's called feeling it real, which is amazing. So you have to really be a deliberate creator in the way that you get to be aware of what's going on, what's running your story, how to clear that. Because again, it just doesn't all happen. You have to take part in that as well.
Well, and for a lot of people, hearing that you can clear your own story offers a lot of power. Because instead of being the victim of circumstances, and by no way it's saying that anything that happens that's horrific is putting us in victim mode, but when something happens, we have the ability to go ahead and say, you know what, I'm changing my mindset, I'm changing how I view these things.
Yeah, and my story too. My philosophy is that life is always happening for us, not to us. And see, that's the part where it really takes being awake and aware. Even if you've never done this stuff before and you start being a detective of your body, what your body's messages are, what's coming to you, you'll start to see that, the people in your experience are a mirror of what your beliefs are inside. I mean, the whole universe is literally just speaking to you all the time. And if you're in denial or you're trying to, cover it up or you're burying your head in the sand, whatever it is, you're not going to see that. I mean, those are all tools for you because the universe loves you so big that it wants you to hear those messages. So again, it's really about being awake and aware and just seeing what's going on. And, when things come to you, when life is happening for you, it's kind of like the fire for me, Mary. And I think I told you this as well, that it was like the giant 2x4, right? There are lots of little things that happened to me before, and I wasn't listening. I wasn't getting the message. So the universe just said, I love you. I'm going to smack you across the head with something that is a little more difficult and hurts, right? And again, you always have a choice. But that's when I really started waking up. What's happening here? Because you go through that battle. It's like, well, God, why did this happen to me? I'm a good person, which is torturous, right? Or what is the universe trying to tell me? So that's when I really start my journey of waking up and realizing that everything that happened to me, and, we don't always understand the lessons, but there are lessons for us to learn in those things.
Yeah, without a doubt. It's interesting because when we go through these different challenges, and you actually just posted something on your Instagram account that I loved. I was like, whoa, that, you always have wisdom that you're pointing. This is one. And I was like, wow. It says some women are lost in the fire. Some women are built from it. And you know what? And I can kind of resonate with that. I could feel that in my core, because when we look, most people have trauma and difficulty that happens within their lifetime. And, you can either succumb to it, or you can, really learn from it and move forward.
Yeah, I love that. It's funny. I love that one too. I love that you love that. That's amazing. But, I guess, again, there are all kinds of conversations, because people who are going through grief and guilt and all kinds of things, I get that. There are some very real human emotions and things that happen that really shake you to the core. Mm-hmm. But again, it's like, and I think too, that a lot of us, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners are people that have that inner fire, like that desire. They know they're here for a greater purpose. And, like my mother, she passed away, and she had kids, and then she just kind of, bided her time by, playing solitaire on her computer and stuff like that. Like, there are people that live those lives, and I believe that that's what they were here to do. As for me and as for you, we have a mission. We have a greater mission. So I've always been, even in my suffering, pulled, towards something. Like, I always knew I was here for a reason. I didn't know what it was. And things kind of hit me, and I felt down about it. But I always laugh about the fire, because I said I was burnt out on my singing career, and, just had all these things that I was saying. It was really like the end of a phase. Mm-hmm. And then the universe used that fire, quote unquote, to move me into why I'm really here. So that inner fire is sometimes small in our, inside of us. But if things keep happening to you, and I really believe light workers have had so many traumas, I have to share this with your audience, right? I just did a Reiki session the other day, and I had known that I had a lot of really crazy things happen to me in past lifetimes. Now, if you don't believe that, that's okay. I've seen it. I know it. And I did a session where I literally saw my hands and my feet were bound. And the Reiki practitioner looked at me afterwards, and she was like, oh my God, because I was in tears. She was in tears. She said, I saw ropes around your entire body. I was burned at the stake for being a witch in another lifetime. And that's why I was afraid to be visible in this lifetime. So again, more fire, themes, mm-hmm. But you really get to connect. You don't have to buy into it, but you get to understand it, see it, clear it. And then that's how your inner grit and your inner fortitude gets bigger.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? Because in your book, you talk about how we go through life kind of like the sheep following a herder, and we're carrying this baggage of our unresolved feelings, our beliefs, our emotions. And, and it was interesting when I was reading that, I was like, gosh, that really resonates with me, because there have been periods, and I still do it at some point, no matter how enlightened one may feel that they are, you kind of come to this point where you're like, ooh, that belief system's still there, or I'm feeling this, So it's interesting when you wrote about, just that analogy, how much it resonated with me, and it makes me kind of go, gosh, I need to look at this a little bit deeper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Again, Joe and I talk all the time. So I was laughing because, he's been in the world for 35, 40 years. And we laugh because, stuff does set us back. And he goes, well, I am human. And that's so true. It doesn't matter how big you get. It doesn't matter how prosperous you are. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The greatest people have been tested, I think, the most. And that's when you have to realize, yeah, you do have you're having a human experience, a physical experience with a body. and you do have emotions. And I think we get to embrace those and be great. Like, I'm a Pisces, so I'm like this emotional roller coaster, right? But I love that about me because I'm a feeler. And we get to embrace that. But then we also don't get to use that as an excuse. We get to look at the messages coming through. I don't know if you ever heard, there's a program out there. There are a lot of different ones, but it's called Body Talk. And I used to teach that too. What is this pain saying? What is this ache saying? What is this thing that I have that's chronic telling me? So it's just a matter of realizing you're human and managing it, navigating it, and still moving forward.
Yeah. You have a quote in your book. It says, "Can you remember who you were, before the world told you who you should be?" And I think it's so important to dive in and kind of question, like, what am I doing here and why?
God, I love that. That was a fun chapter. I can expand on all those chapters. Mm-hmm. It really is true because we come in as this clean slate, right? We're super excited as babies. I believe it's like, we're here. Yay. Let's change the world or whatever we're going to do. Let's play. And then you have to remember, I got certified in a course called the Insight Coaching Program with Beth Banning. And it was amazing because it really talked about these paradigms that we live from. Because, you make decisions and you have feelings. And as you get older, if you're awake and aware at all, you start to realize you're like, why did I just make that decision? Or why is that hurting me so much? Or what, I don't even know where that came from. So it can be complicated. But in reality, remember, you're just getting a set of, beliefs, concepts, whatever, from the people who raised you, the people around you as you were growing up. That's just the way it is. So, you really were told who to be. And then there's a point you can either keep going with that or you can try to find out who you really are authentically.
Okay, well, you said the buzzword, so I'm gonna ride on that. Authenticity.
I know.
Oh, you know what? And it's interesting because a lot of people talk about authenticity, and I love how you describe about it in your book. And I'd love for you to kind of share with us a little bit of what that word means and what are some ways that we can kind of dive into our own personal authenticity, authentic selves.
I love that question. That was a process for me. As you remember, I was an authenticity coach first because that was my journey. Growing up, I didn't like myself. I didn't know myself. I didn't understand myself, and I didn't like other people. I am an introvert, but I was really an extreme introvert. I pushed people away because I was just afraid. Who am I? They're looking at me. I don't even know who I am. So as I started becoming more awake and aware, I started dabbling when I did my first, worked with my first coach, and I did summits, as you know. Mm-hmm. I really had to grapple with being more visible and people making comments I didn't always like and holding back who I really was because I was afraid of rejection or, criticism or whatever. So you have to be willing again. And your listeners need to know this. It's so important that whole theme of surrender. Now, surrender doesn't mean waving a white flag and giving up. Surrender means you have control over certain things, but the universe actually controls other things. So are you willing to just take that ride and trust? You still have to take action of, exposing yourself. I hate using that word because that always sounds
that could go a whole lot of different ways, but for this discussion, we mean like your authentic self, right?
I mean, really, if you want to show up in the world, and it's funny because I always tell this, I still tell the story in the book how on Facebook a couple of years ago, I was doing Facebook Lives and I was coming out, and I had this fire and I used to drop the F-bomb all the time because I was just like, this is me, I don't care what people think. I'm going to do this, and I had a couple of people come and say, well, you're never going to get anywhere by dropping the F-bomb. And I'm like, block them because, they're trying to tell me who to be. And what I realized, down the road is that we always think we have to be perfect, right? But let's face it, transformation is a bit messy. So that was a phase that I had to go through to understand that was just the angry Lisa. I wanted to be seen. I was out there and daggone it, I was going to show up no matter what. And don't you tell me how to be. So I moved through that, and it's not that I never dropped the F-bomb at home. Once in a while I drop something on my toe, but I don't feel that I need it anymore to teach or explain who I am. So again, if we say yes to just, because again, authenticity is not about, piercing your nose or getting tattoos. I mean, you can do that if you want to. I'm not downing that. Just saying there's so many pieces of it, but feeling comfortable in your own skin like I do now. You know, like I go to the store with no makeup and I feel like I'm just in my comfy little cozy slippers and sweater. And I'm so okay with who I am. And I love myself to a degree that I never have. So working on self-love, being willing to surrender and show up even with your flaws, because we all have them. And it's a process. And I don't know if that's helpful or not to your people, but I think it's a starting point. Being willing.
It's helpful, excuse me, it's helpful for me. So, we'll state it like that, because it's true though, because there is a point where we're like, ooh, do we really show the world who we are? And that can be kind of a scary thing,
Oh yeah. Well, and you're always going to find your haters, right? I mean, when you start getting into the public eye, you have all kinds of wacky people show up. But the funny thing is that as you get more comfortable with who you are, and even your message, right? Because I think the first few years, I didn't know who I was. Who am I? Why am I here? What's my message? And you're always looking at coaches and you're looking online and trying to be these other people, but that's not who you are. That's not really you. So once you figure that out, then, and your whole energy changes and you stay in a practice of gratitude and appreciation, and you start doing these things and loving yourself, being love, then the haters are very infrequent. They might pop in once in a while, and they don't bother your energy as much anymore either.
Yeah.
So.
One thing I've had to learn a long time ago is usually when people have something very negative to say, it could either be really good constructive criticism or it's telling me what they feel about themselves. So, it's interesting. You kind of look at it and go,
right.
What am I looking at here?
But again, I love that you do that. And that's the message for the audience as well, is that, look at every single thing as a message from the divine, just loving you to yourself, whether it's, just an awareness so you can let go of it or whatever it is. It's like you're playing detective through your whole entire life, trying to navigate everything. So I love that.
Well, and to kind of touch on what you talk about in your book, people have a choice. And I think a lot of times they don't realize, hey, like I can choose who it is that I am and how I show up in the world.
I love you brought that up. And I know I expand maybe too much, but I think it's important. And I am grateful that you give me the opportunity. I just want to share this because whatever comes forward, that's how, me, that's how I fly, whatever is coming into my conscious thoughts. And that is when I was in a relationship, I was reading Katie and Gay Hendricks' book, Conscious Loving. And it talks about taking responsibility in a relationship. Well, let's face it, most of us, because nobody's really taught relationship skills or communication skills or anything, right? We just kind of fly by the seat of our pants. So I was in this relationship and we were committed to having better communication. So anyway, I was reading about responsibility. And then I had, I loved how the universe brought me the opportunity. Okay, you really want to learn this, then, you get to actually experience it. So I had an interesting thing come up, and that was when something happened in my experience with my partner, and I felt like it was his fault, and I started blaming. I'm like, wait, I didn't do anything. Like, you're doing it to me. Right. Mm-hmm. So then I sat there and I went, well, how's this my responsibility? And I grappled with it. I am not responsible. So this is where you get to make the choice. Number one, you're aware of what's happening. And if you feel any discomfort in your body, there's something that is, you have to remember, I want your audience to remember this. Whenever you feel discomfort or joy, you're always trying to get to what you value. Like for me, I value most freedom, integrity, safety, your core values. You always try to get to them, whether, if you're feeling uncomfortable, the universe is telling you you're not getting to your core value. If you're happy, you've hit a core value that's important to you. So anyway, I had the choice, right? Okay, I'm going to say that he's responsible, daggone it. I'm pointing the fingers. And when I did that, for days, we didn't talk, silent treatment, I was angry and all that. So it happened again. And this time I didn't believe that I was responsible, but I said, okay, I'm responsible. I'm taking responsibility. I don't really believe it, but I'm going to say it. I said it, and it was like magic. Within a day, we resolved everything. There was no charge. Nothing bad came up. So again, it's literally in that second that you make a choice to do it one way or the other. That's how your experience unfolds.
That's so important. I mean, that's such great wisdom because a lot of times people, they don't really understand, number one, what their values are. And you have a
Right.
list of different ones in the book, which I thought was really helpful because when people look at this, they're like, well, I don't know what I value. I like family,
Right.
country, I don't know. And so it helps them kind of break it down to a more personal level. You talk about freedom and safety and you've got all these other ones that are listed as well that really the reader can take time and go, okay, what is important to me, what do I feel defines my life.
And that even takes work when you look at core values, because you have to look at how you run your life, what your story is. And for me, it's kind of like I realized when I was in toxic relationships or any relationship where I felt suffocated, I started using these words. Now, some of this has to do with my past lifetimes as well, but I started using the words, I feel imprisoned. I feel like I'm imprisoned. Then my body would start to hurt. Then I would start being incredibly miserably and, unhappy. And it was like, what is happening? It was a pattern in my life. So I had to start looking at why was I feeling imprisoned? Well, when I finally got to the fact that one of my huge core values is freedom. Nothing, whatever holds me back, whoever holds me back, the energy, the experience, whatever it is, if I'm being held back, I want to run because I need to be free. Now that's a long conversation in and of itself, because you can be in a marriage where you can't just run, but it's not that, it's an energy. What do you value? And then you adjust your life according to your values. So
Yeah.
it's big.
Make adjustments from there. Well, in your book and your turning point, you talk about selfish versus self-honoring. And I'd love for you to expand on that because I think a lot of times people get really confused by those two things.
Well, you are such an incredible interviewer. I love you. Not only are you an amazing person, but you
I love you too. I mean, we've been friends for a while. It's so awesome that you've got this amazing book. I mean, it's made an impact on me. I'm sure it's going to impact a lot of other people too. But it really gets down to some of these questions that a lot of people want answered for their lives.
Yeah, and I love that. And that's, again, I could expand on this. This is what just came through for the first time. But selfish versus self-honoring is so huge because I do explain in that story. As a matter of fact, I sent a book to my ex of 2 years in LA and his beautiful mother because I wanted them to understand why I did what I did. And that is, I got a hit to go to San Diego when I was in the middle of my relationship in LA. And he and I looked at each other and he got freaked out. He's like, well, are you leaving? And I'm like, no, I don't know what I'm doing. I just got a hit that I'm supposed to go back to San Diego. So what does that look like? Maybe you'll go with me. Maybe I'm working. I don't know. Right. So we did a leadership training together. And then a few months later, about 6 months later, our relationship shifted. And it wasn't that it was a bad relationship. And it wasn't that he was a bad guy. It was that my inner guidance told me that I was supposed to leave the relationship. So what do you do, right? When you get the hit to leave a relationship and your truth, your inner guidance doesn't match that of your partner's, what do you do? So if I would have been told to stay, I would have stayed and we would have worked it out. And whatever would have happened. But I worked through it. I grappled with it. I was aware. I was awake. I did the work around it. And it was absolutely clear that I was supposed to leave the relationship. Now that hurt him, and it hurt me to hurt him. But I had to speak my truth. Was that being selfish or was that being self-honoring? And in my book, when you are self-honoring, it's for everybody's highest and best good. There is an outcome that when you make a decision that it comes from your inner guidance, that it is always in everybody's highest and best good, even when they don't see it and they don't know it. So I think a selfish decision is one where only you benefit and it's for other reasons. For me, it was I follow my divine guidance and I'm here as a light worker to do what Spirit has led me to do, whatever that looks like. And I have to honor that. I get to honor my happiness. I get to honor that. And a lot of people in my book, I even share, a lot of people think that's crazy. It's the unknown. I'm not always popular with my decisions, but I live my life by following my inner guidance, period. And that is what has gotten me to my miracle space. So it's huge. But again, self-honoring is honoring your guidance, yourself, and knowing that it's in the highest and best of everybody else.
That is such an important thing because a lot of times I think that when we look at that, a lot of people don't even understand what that's all about. So I appreciate you breaking it down for us. And it's interesting, having that self-honoring, approach to life. You're so right. It shifts the energy in everything.
It does. And I love that you brought that up because it is energy. We are energy beings. I mean, a lot of people think this is just a human horrible experience. It's not. I mean, I told you I'm doing Reiki work and releasing lifetimes of stuff and having like detox symptoms that are huge and grief coming up that I had in my body. So we have to remember it is all energy. And again, it's where your intentions are as well. You can live in fear and make those quote unquote self-honoring decisions, and then you're going to experience from that. This is just coming forward for whatever reason. Or you can live in trust and knowing, and you don't have to always know where you're going. A lot of times you don't when you follow Spirit's guidance, as you know, because you live your life that way too. But again, it's the energy attached to it. And I think the energy of selfishness comes from, number one, there's this huge, remember, all of our thoughts are coagulated with the whole planet's thoughts. So sometimes those things that are coming through your head are not yours. But there are a lot of things, like I mentioned in my book, Murphy's Law, like we buy into a lot of things that are not ours, and then we create from that space. So, everything is energy, and it's a way you look at it. And it's also, you can also ask your question, one of the biggest questions when you're making a decision and you feel it's coming from your inner guidance, what would love do? Is this in my highest and best good and somebody else's as well? So there are lots of ways to deal with that.
Well, and, I love that question. What would love do? Because then it kind of makes it really simple for people to break it down going, okay, what would love do? What would be the one thing that works for everyone's best and highest good? Yeah.
And not everybody does it with motives that are for the highest and best good. So,
that's true.
I lived that way probably most of my life before I woke up. So yeah, but that's a hard question because sometimes you may not like the answer. But again, if you follow the right thing, again, that's why I have such a huge chapter on intuition in there, because I think that's one of the primary foundations of living a life like this and getting where you want to go.
Well, I love how you also talk about mindfulness and meditation in your book as well. And so how important is it having a daily practice?
Oh, girl.
That important.
I just share with you what's been going on in my life, which has been crazy. And yes, we're all human and we all have human moments where we get out of practice. And then, all of a sudden you wake up and you go, oh, wait a minute. I'm a deliberate creator. And what I'm doing now is I'm allowing myself to be a victim of fate and fall into that human pattern of, oh God, what do I do now or whatever. And it's funny because again, when you make that decision to wake up and you switch it, it really is a switch. You actually feel better. You start feeling hopeful, and then you start incorporating things like my whole 1-bedroom wall is a vision board of what's coming. And it has colors and vibrancy. And actually I have to tell you, many of the things that are on there are so crazy. Like I saw a picture of a street in Italy and a cafe, and I was like, I want to go there. Like that. That's a street I want to be on. Well, long story short, I'm going to be going there, and it does exist, and I didn't even know where it was, and it's going to be where I am. So that's how crazy it is. You literally create from your visions. You create from your emotions, feeling it real, and that doesn't mean thinking it real. It means that you feel the outcome of something that you want to have happen that's already happened, and you feel the satisfaction, the feelings of having it. And another really quick thing to do for people, because a lot of people don't have time to quote unquote meditate, sitting in stillness, listening to music, walking in nature is all meditative. But I always suggest too, and I'm going back to this practice myself, of pulling out a couple of books that really speak to you. And even if you have a 9-to-5 job, if you pull out a page and you read it and it uplifts you, it shifts your mindset, that is helping you to stay on course. So lots of little tips that are easy to do.
Oh, your book, Your Turning Point, has lots of tips, lots of great information. And you talk about, we were kind of just touching on about the law of attraction. And you talk about in your book how, most people, and I get this because, before you get to a sense of some type of awareness, we're kind of just bumbling around through life, but how someone can have such a negative thought process, that they're not good enough, or they're not worthy, or they're not, safe, or whatever that is, and how that shows up in their life until changes are made.
Yeah, and I love that because that is like what I talked about earlier, and that is we're creating from our subconscious thoughts and our wounds, and all that stuff surfaces at some point. And I do a lot of tapping now. I do Ho'oponopono. I do my own, Qigong, things like that. But I notice, as I do things, what I do is the thing is you really do feel like you're a victim of fate if you have these emotions come up and these negative thoughts and these patterns show up. And a lot of people feel, they're helpless. They don't know what to do. So what I love to teach is, and do myself, because I do what I teach, that is very simple processes and tools every day, that when stuff comes up, because we all have feelings of not being good enough. We all have wounds from childhood and past lives and all that stuff that surface or that create, from deep within. So as long as you have, like with tapping, you can do tapping and it doesn't have to be complicated. I gave it up years ago because it seemed very complicated, but you can actually create shortcuts. And when something comes up, you can do these things that will release the charge. You'll cry, or you'll feel relief or whatever. And you can do that for even physical symptoms. So I think the biggest thing, again, is to realize you have negative thoughts, not beat yourself up for it, understand what your patterns are, and then find little tools that you can use on the spot to find relief and release. And then, like I told you, I'm doing Reiki and stuff. I'm always, getting acupressure, Reiki. Working with energy healers. I'm always working through my stuff because till the day you're off the planet, right? You're always dealing with human, stuff.
Well, the day we're done, right?
Right. Then we're on to the next adventure, right?
I know, the next great adventure. And it's interesting because when you start looking at life as opportunity, when these things show up, they're opportunity as opposed to, oh my God, the planet hates me. Why is the universe trying to punish me? Which, hey, I did that. I thought that way. I'm like, someone asked me, you think the universe is working in your benefit? I'd be like, no. What planet are you on?
Right. Exactly. Well, for my book, that was my experience for 53 years. It was somebody else's fault and I was desperate. So I feel that. I get that.
Well, gosh, Lisa, where can people, because there's so much great information in your turning point, where can people go to learn more about the book and more about what you do?
Oh, is it time? Our interview went so quickly. It's great.
Time always goes by so quickly. I know. I'm just like, wow, it happened.
Quickly, God. Thank you for asking that. My website, which is still under construction, they can still go to it. I just changed it. It was yes=success.com. It's now Lisa A. Winston, but it'll all lead you to the same place. If you go to Amazon, you can find my book there, and it's also in Kindle, still only 99 cents for the Kindle version, but I love having a physical book in my hand. That's just me. And then if you go to the landing page, it's yourturningpointbook.com. That'll give you more information. There's a trailer there. Also, if you buy the book, you can put in your code from Amazon and get $300 worth of bonuses as well. So all kinds of ways they can find me.
Lots of really good stuff there. And I think I'm going to ask one more question before we go, because we've got time. We could do whatever we want here. So, so you talk about awareness in your book. So why don't you share a little bit about what that means and why is that important?
Such a great question, Marianne, to end with. Being awake and aware, again, is being aware that you are here for a reason, that you matter. You're not here just sucking up air and taking up space. The universe loves you so much that it put you here in this beautiful experience to grow and change and shift, and maybe even to help the planet grow in some way and people grow. So being awake and aware it's kind of like taking off those blinders. It's like as opposed to things happening to us, things are happening for us, as opposed to the universe hates us and it's bringing us things like fires and rapes and illnesses and all that kind of stuff. No, the universe is loving you so big. It wants you to be aware that you're here to grow and to learn lessons. And so it's really just starting, like I said before, being a detective. When things happen, literally every day, feel into your body, feel into your feelings, feel into your experiences, feel into that fear that drives your life. Feel in, ask questions. God, you can talk to your angels and your guide. You can talk to your body. You can talk to the universe. Ask questions. Become a detective. Become so acutely aware of your story and your patterns, and then move forward from there. That's the only way to live, and that's the only way. Being awake and aware is the only way to be.
Isn't that the truth? Well, and it's interesting because I know, especially when I first started my journey be like, what does that even mean? And I'd get the book and I'd read it and I'd feel like I'm hitting my head against the wall because for some whatever reason, I'm just a little bit tougher than the average bear to get things, So doing that. So do you work with people who are looking to make the transition to another level? Because I know you got so much going on. That might not even be something that you are scheduling at this time. But if you are, I'd love to hear about it.
Oh, I love that question. I was going to mention that too. I've had mentors and coaches because there really is a point where, online courses and books aren't going to do it. You need to do the deeper work. I've done, 4-month leadership trainings and staffings. I've thrown myself into things that were very uncomfortable because I am determined to be better, become more of who I'm here to be. And I can't do it with all the junk that's holding me down. So I did coach for years. I am taking coaching clients as they come in because I'm not advertising. I do when somebody, texts me or whatever, I do work with them. I do energy healing. I do just coaching and mentoring. I just had my very first live event in Austin called Own the Stage. So I'm going to be putting a program out around that, probably doing more live events. And I think coaching is in my future again. So yeah, if somebody feels led to work with me and we're aligned, absolutely reach out to me because I won't turn you away. That's for sure.
Well, that's good because I'm making an appointment. So
have an appointment, but that's just a chat.
Well, Lisa, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Oh, thank you for having me. You are such a bright light. I love you so much. I've missed you, and I am so excited that we are reconnecting again. But I hope this really helps a lot of people move forward.
Well, thank you, Lisa. I know you and your book are all about helping people move forward, making those impactful changes, and I have no doubt that you are doing exactly what you're meant to do. If you'd like to learn more about Lisa and her book, you can at yourturningpointbook.com. We'll have the link below. Make sure to sign up for her newsletter, be part of her community, and get involved in that discussion. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary. A recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.